Watch him throw the ball, we gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through 4th and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders, heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Die.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to another Trap or Die podcast. I am your host, Mual. What's going on with you, JB? Let me go ahead and bring in AJ. He just checked in right quick. Hold on. Boom, man. Boom. There we go. Like I said, I'm your host, Mual, man. AJ is checking in. Dre is on the way. Let's get the administrative items out of the way before we get into the show. If you are watching on YouTube, man, we definitely appreciate you watching. If you new, you haven't done so yet, man, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button. We appreciate that. If you want to Twitch side, like my man Jarian, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow. I don't know how they do it over there anymore. Hit that follow button for sure. Stay locked in with Trap or Dive podcast on the Twitch side. And then obviously audio, man. Give us a follow on your favorite platform. Hit that rating and review if you haven't done so. It's free to do so in terms of support, man. We don't charge you nothing. But shout out to Hulk. I seen you last show. I shouted you out my last episode too, previewing the Super Bowl. I saw your donation to the game, man, to Trap or Die, man. We definitely appreciate that. Showing love as you always do, Hulk. So we definitely appreciate that and your support. You've been here. You've been one of the morning trappers, man. If you know, you know. Hey, so I see y'all, Jay Tyler. I see you, Magic. What's going on, Monty, Will, Twan? Appreciate y'all checking in. AJ, what's going on with you, player? How you feeling, bro?
Man, just been kind of under the weather, but at the end of the day, just blessed to see another day. Took in Super Bowl week last week.
You was out there too, wasn't you?
Yeah, ended up getting some type of what they told me, an upper respiratory infection. So yeah, ended up in the hospital on Friday for a little bit, but yeah, good to go, man. Just got work done, got the employees straight, and just finished off the last Super Bowl, man.
I told you, keep them stripper toes out of your mouth, bro. And you was gonna be fine, bro.
My cousin, man, she asked me to come meet her fiance for the first time, and me not knowing this fool was sick. So it's like I walk in the spot, I see the COVID test or whatever, and I'm like, antennas go off, spider senses, like, man, one of y'all got COVID? She's like, nah, I don't have COVID. Like, everything's straight. We went to the Baltimore Ravens game. His mom was concerned. And then when he finally came out, it was my first time meeting him. I'm like, hey, man, how you doing? Nice to meet you. He's like, man, I'm doing okay. Just getting over this bug. I said, get the fuck out of here, bro.
There it is, bro.
Yeah,
Hey, look at Jay. Said you was smoking that hookah, bro. That's what got you. That's the real truth.
Hold on. AJ got that vid? You got the vid?
Nah, hell nah. I was scared. I thought I did. I didn't know what was going on because I was literally just fighting through for the last 5 days last week. Man, something got to break through. I'm taking all type of meds, like vitamins. Ain't nothing cracking the code. I'm like, man, it got to be something. So I just let me go to the hospital, get checked, something, because I was just feeling like I couldn't even breathe right. But yeah, it's just an upper respiratory infection. But I'm better now, so I might cough a little here and there during the show. I may not be able to catch the mute button in time, but yeah, I'm good to go, man. Just glad to be back with you boys and chop it up. Look like we got a lot to talk about.
Hold on, man. Has AJ been on since we hired Dan Quinn? AJ, you been on here since we got
Nah, we did the show. It was me and you. We did the duo.
We don't even know how he feel. How does he feel about Dan Quinn?
I thought we did.
Did you?
Nah,
you may
we probably you last time because
I
last week
watched some of the show. I watched some of the show while I was on the plane last week, but I ain't get all of it because of the Wi-Fi. But I thought I had talked about Dan Quinn with y'all already.
Probably to us. I mean, honestly, bro, it don't hurt to rehash it. You know what I'm saying? So if you got your thoughts on Dan, because we getting into the assistants today. But if you got your thoughts on Dan, shoot, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when it comes to Dan Quinn, man, I just feel like he's a great guy, great personality. I've had several encounters with him over the time. Being that I worked with Cam Chancellor back in the day, that was part of the Legion of Boom with the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm familiar with him. Also familiar with Ken Norton Jr. One of my other former clients, Navarro Bowman, played 1 year with the Raiders while Jack Del Rio was a head coach, and Ken Norton was, I want to say he was either defensive coordinator or something alongside like Pagano. So it's some familiar people that I've come across and just like their personality. But with Dan Quinn, man, it's about marrying those relationships. Like that's what it really boils down to. Like being able to build out a staff, as we've seen, it's a lot of formidable names with heavy resumes, or even guys that are younger in the game, but they've been accomplished in some aspect, whether it be on a collegiate level or professional level. But they have their credentials intact. It's not one of those Ron Rivera staffs where it's kind of like people from back in the day. They used to do things in 2010, and then they just didn't work for the next decade. You got guys that been in the mix, that been in the fold, so they know exactly what's going on, whether it be on the collegiate level or the professional ranks. They just added another guy who was a dog at Florida, still young, he like 32, 33, Sharif Floyd. He's going to be a part of the D-line group. He was a first-round pick for the Vikings back in the day, and with the Cowboys. There's still a possibility that Al Harris could join the staff now that the hire is official with Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer is a big defensive backs guy, so he might want to bring in one of his guys. I checked in on that before we started the show. Yeah, like I said, when it comes to Dan Quinn, man, at the end of the day, you want someone that's a great personality, knows how to manage relationships and build and cultivate staffs. If you look at his Falcons staff, he had Raheem Morris over there, Mike McDaniels, who's now the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He brought in Kyle Shanahan after his tenureship with the Cleveland Browns that wasn't successful, but a lot of people don't focus on that. So I feel like Dan has a great eye for talent. Jeff Ulbrich, he's a defensive coordinator for the New York Jets. He was on his staff. So those are the main things that you kind of want out of your head coach. What is interesting to me is I thought that he would still try to call the plays defensively here. He's now passed that over to Joe Witt Jr., who was with him in Dallas. As I told you guys privately, I've reached out trying to get, some of these individuals on the show to, kind of speak on Joe Witt, but I trust their opinions, and they also have the credentials of being formidable within the NFL. They vouch for Joe Witt Jr. and how he works and how he teaches. Kind of said he's a hard ass, which kind of
I was just about to ask you, because like I forgot what it is that you had said, but you literally just brought it up, like that conversation that we had with the offensive side of the football and the previous offensive coordinator, and the coaching style that Joe Witt brings based on what you understood.
Yeah, from what I understood, everything that was being told to me, from guys that I trust and guys that I know that have done it to a high level in the NFL, like one of them being a Heisman Trophy winner and Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL. They kind of described him as being kind of like Eric Bieniemy in a sense. Just he's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. This is his first time to really call the shots as a D coordinator, but he's been prepared for this opportunity, been, excited for this. He's very close friends with Ryan Clark. There's a lot of relationships there that all make sense. So that'd be interesting how the defense takes to it. But, they're bringing on guys that onto the staff that also have a D coordinator background in Ken Norton, Pagano. We'll see how the rest of the stuff fills out. The interesting thing is they kept Kerrigan. He's the pass rush coach, which we know during his tenure with Washington, he just pretty much bull rush. So I don't know what technique.
I said that too, and then I swear, like I think it's a bias in our head that does that, which is cool. But I think when you kind of like expand further into the roles of teaching, I think even like coaches who never played before, right? Like how are they going to teach you about a pass rush move, or how are they going to teach you about a blocking scheme and things like that? But they still good enough to do it. And so like I gotta like get out of my bias because I know like Ryan had one move that worked. Like he had some change-ups, but you barely got into the change-ups. But that's kind of my process is like I know he has some teaching points where it's like he's seen 1,000 things on tape that he may not have been able to do, but he may be able to see it in this player that Washington has. So I'm gonna make sure I get this out of him. And that's kind of how I try to rationalize it.
That's it. I mean, that's challenging too, but you're seeing a lot of former players such as Ryan, even Navarro just got his position with the Chargers. Yeah, it's official with that. But I mean, a lot of teams are hiring these pass rush specialist coaches that a lot of these guys work with in the offseason. There's a guy by the name of Brian Jordan who was one of the top guys in the marketplace. Like if you're an agent or you're a player, you're really trying to get your pass rushers with him. Work with Von Miller, pretty much anything Von Miller did, like Pass Rush Summit, it was Brian Jordan and then Chuck Smith. So Chuck Smith is now running pass rush specialist with the Baltimore Ravens. Brian Jordan ended up going to Michigan State when everything happened with Mel Tucker. He now works for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't know what's going to happen there now with Mike McDonald taking over. But, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how, all these personalities mesh together. I just feel like I listened to that Chick Hernandez interview with Josh Harris, and it gave me a vibe that they didn't understand how long of a process or how things were actually going to work with this hiring thing as far as like in comparison to the NHL and NBA. And I feel like they dropped the ball. I don't want to say they dropped the ball on not being able to secure Ben Johnson, but I don't think that the number 1 and 2 guy on their list after the interviews was Dan Quinn. It's just the way that the cards played out. And it was probably between Mike McDonald and Raheem Morris. But unfortunately, how everything played out, I guess I'll probably say they settled in a sense. That was the person with the greatest relationships left on the table.
So let me ask.
That's the one interesting part about the Dan Quinn hire. I feel like if they had to hire another coach, let's say 3-4 years down the road, you will not see that shit take this long. Like you will not see them interview as many candidates as they did with this. It was just way too like.
Well, AJ, their process would get started a little earlier too. The next time around, assuming that Adam Peters is here, that process starts a lot earlier than it did. I mean, obviously it was a different process this time. I mean, they had to hire the GM first, so you had to get your GM candidate in. So he wasn't around to kind of gauge head coaching candidates or use his relationships to say, hey, this is what we're going to do, or this is the plan. Like literally they were starting from ground zero, whereas other teams, they were, just kind of looking for a head coach. I know some teams, I think the Chargers were looking for a GM, but in our situation, we had a new owner who had never been through any of this before. He just got his GM, and then he had to come in and just kind of, I guess, pick up where the search committee team had left off. So, I think that's what the process was. I also kind of disagree on the settling because from everything we've heard, Dan Quinn was at the top of their list from day one. I mean, fans didn't want to hear it. That was the whole thing. Fans did not want to hear it. Every time Dan Quinn's name came up, fans groaned. Oh, no, that can't be true. I hope it's not true. It's Ben Johnson. It's Mike McDonald, whatever. But no, I mean, so that's what I said. Dan Quinn's name was always talked about. And fans were getting mad when they heard that his interviews were going well. Like they had been saying his interviews have been going well from day one.
But I think the thing with Dan Quinn, his interviews are always going to go well, right? Because he's a people's person. and he was always going to be a top candidate. But I don't think he was 1 or 2. Like he was in the top 3. You feel me? But I think that they had more interest in like the Mike McDonald's and the Raheem Morris, and even how like that played out, like him pretty much saying, Raheem telling them like, I can't wait any longer. I now have this opportunity with a job offer with the Falcons, and if you guys aren't prepared to proceed with me, I got to go take that. You feel me? So it's like if Dan Quinn, in my opinion, if he was truly like their number 1 guy, they could have did that a couple weeks ago. Like, I understand that they want to sit down with everybody, but at some point, even off of the Zoom meetings with guys that were still in the playoffs, you kind of got a feel of how this is going to look, how it's going to feel, how that rapport is. But either way, you know, they made their hire. I'm not opposed to Dan Quinn. I feel like out of the bunch that was remaining available to hire, he was the best guy available for the job. The only pushback that I have per se so far, and we'll get into that as we'll focus on the assistants, is the Cliff Kingsbury hire. That's my only pushback so far. I'm so curious about that.
So let's see about this. Compare this one comparison. I have a question for you. We don't have to make it more of a. We don't have to make it a long-term conversation, but based on what we know now, with Dan Quinn as your head coach, Cliff Kingsbury as your offensive coordinator, why did I just draw it? Joe Witt Jr. as your defensive coordinator, right? And then all the assistants under both of those guys to this point. Would you, if you had an option, stand pat with Dan Quinn and his current coaching staff that you are currently aware of, or would you have still risked, if you were one, and I'm asking really us, but I'm also asking everybody in the chat, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, I can see all of your comments. You let us know. Would you take the gamble with Ben Johnson, the offensive guru, and whoever his staff would have been, or even Ben Mike McDonald and what his staff could have been? Or would you stay pat with what you know now and Dan Quinn and the staff that he has brought in to Washington? And I think that's important because think about what the offensive coordinator would have been for Ben Johnson. And that was a big conversation here when we had Glover Quinn on.
We got to get that right, bro.
We got to, bro.
Glover Quinn Jr.
There it is.
Okay,
Glover.
that's what I thought. There it is.
Yeah, I said Glover too for sure. Drake had me saying Glover, bro. It's his fault.
No, you said Glover, bro.
Hey, but like, all right. So what we gonna do? Like, we staying pat with Dan Quinn and his staff, or we taking that gamble and still going for that offensive guru or that young defensive guru and Mike McDonald? What we doing?
Hey, I mean, I would stand pat with Quinn. You know, like I said, the one objection I kind of feel on the fence about is the Cliff Kingsbury thing, and we'll get more in depth with that. But my biggest concern and what I've always heard in regards to Ben Johnson was his inability to build out a staff that an ownership group could feel comfortable with. I tweeted about that publicly, got backlash from fans, which was funny. But at the end of the day, like, those are important qualities. And I mean, if Dan is going to take a step back, DQ, he's going to take a step back and manage all of these personalities and manage the team and oversee everything. It makes you feel even more comfortable because he'll be able to be hands-on with each element of the football team. But there's no way in hell that if I were the owner, would be comfortable with hearing rumblings that Hank Fraley, your offensive line coach, is possibly going to be your OC. It's like, damn, what else is going to be a part of this staff? Like, I'm cool with what Dan Quinn has done so far. Like I said, he's brought in guys with experience. He's also brought in guys with youth on their side and kept guys with youth like the Pritchards of the world. You bring in a Brian Johnson who has played quarterback at Utah, been a top guy in the NCAA in the past. Also has worked with Jalen Hurts and just recently came off his tenureship as OC with the Eagles, you know, to go alongside Kingsbury and what he has in touch, like just being able to get a good feel of the youth of this team, but you still also have elder statesmen that, you know, have been there, done that. So it's a good blend staff-wise so far.
And for me, no, I'm actually going with Quinn as well, knowing what I know now, and not even just because of Ben Johnson and the prospect of whatever he could have done with his staff, but you're kind of seeing that with Mike McDonald and the Seahawks. I mean, he was another candidate. He was hired late. He was actually hired right before we hired Dan Quinn, and he's still having a hard time filling his staff out. And that's probably because he is a first-time guy
from college too, bro. That's
crazy. He doesn't have many relationships right now. He's pretty much only been in Baltimore as far as the NFL ranks, and Baltimore guys, their staff is staying intact. So who are you kind of bringing with you? And you got to kind of think of that with Ben Johnson as well. Like, who are your relationships with? Who are you going to be able to build a staff? I mean, not even just saying, all right, we're going to build this staff of all-star coaches or whatever, but who are you going to bring in at all right now? Because it seems like you're going to struggle with that because Mike McDonald's showing you that. And we probably would have been going through the same thing with Ben Johnson. So that's the risk you run. So knowing what we know about Quinn now, I mean, I knew that Quinn was well-liked. I knew that, you know, Quinn had a good reputation outside of what he did in Atlanta. Like, people, you know, really respected Quinn. But I didn't know his ability to draw in the guys as quickly as he draws in. I mean, we kind of got to know him a bit. We kind of got to know him a bit in the press conference. So we got to kind of see some of that personality on top of what we've been hearing about him. And now we're seeing people follow him. And the great thing about this is, and I know fans we're going to get more into the position coaches, but I know fans are grumbling about some of them. They like some of them. But the point of the matter is these names he's bringing in, they're from all different types of backgrounds. As AJ said earlier, it's not like the Ron Rivera buddy hire system. You got to figure, you know, regardless of what you think about a guy, it's, you know, what he did at a previous stop, that they are hiring guys that are impressing them. And that's what I want. That's what I want you to be impressed by the guys that you're bringing in versus, hey, I can have a laugh with this guy, or I trust this guy. I know him from this place. He's going to do this. No, they're bringing in people that are saying, hey, they must be bringing something to the table. They must be aligning with the vision, whatever they're trying to accomplish. But they're coming from different backgrounds. Like I said, a lot of these guys, they don't have working relationships with, you know, the Cliff Kingsbury. And I love what, like I said, Dan Quinn has said about Cliff Kingsbury before. He said, that guy's office gave me trouble when I had the game plan against him. And I said, if I ever have a chance, I would love to bring him as my offensive coordinator. That's the type of stuff you like to see from a head coach. I mean, he's not coming in with an ego. He's bringing in guys that can challenge him. He's bringing in guys that he respects as a competitor. So, I mean, you're seeing that. And that, to me, I mean, that's winning me. You know, whatever I thought about Dan Quinn when he got hired, whether, you know, he was going to be a failure because he was a retread or he didn't do well here, you know, whatever the case may be, he's winning me over seeing the people that he's bringing in, because I'm saying these people respect him, and also the way he's bringing them in, they are impressing him and they are aligning with the rest of the staff. So, yeah, give me the Dan Quinn over the mystery of what a Ben Johnson could have provided.
Yeah, Ben Johnson and McDonald, honestly, and y'all know, like, Raheem was my number one, but I'm not even sure how confident I would be, like, with the advantage of seeing what has occurred to this point. I don't know, like, to what degree Raheem would be able to match what Dan got, and I think from a standpoint of just looking at the staff, because I don't want to reiterate everything you all said, because I agree, like, I'm staying pat with Dan Quinn. I don't, the biggest thing is just understanding you have veterans in important places, right? You have people with the experience that AJ highlighted initially, right? And I think when you have experience, but you have people who are all competitors within their own right, like, that's these guys' pedigree. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, they're in here to win. They're not in here to, like, be cordial with the head coach, or like just be just float throughout their entire tenure here, right? They're here to work and they're here to win. And I think that's important. I mean, not to say that previous coaches weren't in here to win. I think that's kind of a little disrespectful. I didn't mean it in that way, but just in a standpoint of, like, Ron got these guys here because he was comfortable with them. Like, Dan got people in that he probably had relationships with, but that don't mean that, you know, he fully like it was like they were always gonna like kneel to him or have like he was gonna have total power over them. Like by nature of his position as head coach, you know, he has a lot of he's like at a hierarchy standpoint, but like that's not what he's in here for. Like he's in here to collaborate, but also like the ultimate goal is winning. And I think he's understanding that by how he's building out his staff. So with that sense, I stay with Dan. And I don't blink twice. I don't think twice about it. So let's get into this one part of the conversation. Dre, who do you think is the most important, or excuse me, the one that stands out the most, the position coach or assistant that stands out the most under Dan Quinn's current staff to this point?
I'm not going to go with the obvious one yet because I'm pretty sure you all probably will bring that up. But the tight end coach they hired today, David Rea, could be pronouncing his name wrong, but I mean, it stands out to me from the standpoint that he was with Cliff Kingsbury at Texas Tech for 1 year. Then he was with him as the wide receivers coach in Arizona for 2 years. And Cliff Kingsbury actually fired him after the 2020 season. I don't know what the disconnect was between him and David Rea at the time. I know that was the first year that they had DeAndre Hopkins on their roster. DeAndre Hopkins actually had I think he was second team All-Pro that year. He had a really good year, but I think from what I heard and a couple of things I was able to check in on, there was some kind of disconnect on how they wanted to use DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't know if that disconnect stemmed from Cliff Kingsbury and David Rea or where it came from, but that was one of the things that was kind of floating around as to why he went off. And then he left that stop. He went to Vanderbilt for a year, and he actually went to Vanderbilt to be the offensive coordinator and the wide receivers coach. He got demoted as the play caller after 1 week of practice at Vanderbilt. So they took away offensive coordinator and just made him be wide receivers coach. And I think he probably does that pretty well. Maybe that's his thing, but then you see Cliff Kingsbury is able to get him back. He brings him back as the tight ends coach here, not the wide receivers coach. So you got to figure maybe he feels like this guy will be a better fit. And I just wonder how he's going to mesh. And that's the thing. The tight end position has been a bit of an issue for us over the last couple of years. It's been a weakness, and it's not because of a position coach. We just haven't had, pretty much the talent or whatever the personnel at that spot. But that's one of the things. That's one of the positions we want to see grow forward, especially in an air raid offense. If that's the offense they're going to run with Cliff Kingsbury, I mean, it's the offense he knows, but the tight end is going to be pretty important, especially like a downfield target, a guy that's going to be like the extra receiver on the field. So that hire kind of stands out to me to see how he'll foster the development of future tight end prospects that we're going to bring in. So I'm looking at him because, like I said, him and Cliff had a past before, whereas he's got fired before. And now what does he see that's going to make it work? Yeah.
Dre, hold on. You said this man was the OC for 1 week
Vanderbilt.
And then got fired? Or
no, not demoted? Fired. He got demoted. He got demoted after the first week of spring practice with Vanderbilt. They took away his play calling duties and just said, nope, you're going to coach wide receivers. That's it. 1 week, not even a whole goddamn spring. they took it away after 1 week.
That's crazy. I ain't never heard of that.
I never heard of that either.
That was at Vanderbilt, right?
That was at Vanderbilt, 2021.
I mean, they're pretty bad at football, but that is hella weird. I don't know, buddy. I don't know, dude, but I can't imagine me getting an OC job and I ain't even get to finish spring practice, spring ball.
It was his first OC job. Yeah, it was his first OC job too. So I'm assuming he must have thought, hey, this will be a bigger possibility for me because he had only been a position coach. Mind you, he's a former quarterback too. So this kind of goes back to what you were talking about with Ryan Kerrigan and his one move, and is he going to be able to teach it? But this guy played quarterback and he's pretty much moved all around as a position coach. He's coached offensive line, he's coached wide receivers. So I guess he was looking at this OC moment as, all right, this is my chance, and he got it stripped away after 1 week. But honestly, though, I don't know if you all have got a chance to listen to him, but I kind of listened to him talking. He doesn't seem like the biggest or the sharpest communicator. So I don't know if that's an issue when it comes to the OC position, but he's just somebody that stands out to me at the tight end coach.
Yeah, that's interesting, but I don't know much about the guy. I would say for me, I'm still kind of stuck on this Kingsbury thing. It's just, even today I was watching The Pivot and their guest was Antonio Pierce, and he even touched on the fact I thought I had my OC, and here you go, Magic Johnson, was able to still dish out an assist and pull him away. So he confirmed it on the pivot episode today in regards to what happened with Cliff. So it just becomes even more intriguing. You know, we talk privately, like the guys, a lot of the guys that they hire have played quarterback in the past on a collegiate level, and Cliff being a former NFL quarterback. You know, what are they preparing to do, and how is this all going to mess with one another? Whether it be Pritchard, who was brought in by EB, now Brian Johnson, who's a former quarterback and a quarterback's coach and former OC, Kingsbury, who, you know, is now going to be the OC but used to be the head coach. Like, and now you mentioned Dan Rhea. I don't even remember.
David Rhea. I think I could be wrong with that last name.
Okay, so yeah, like you bring in all these different personalities that also have an experience of playing the position or whatever. How is that all going to work? That's what I'm really curious about OC wise, because even, you know, not really knowing Cliff like that, but I know his offense. Like, I know his offense from a collegiate level and pro level. Then we also got an in-depth look into his season. I know me and Mual talked about it a lot. That in season with Cliff Kingsbury as the head coach for the Cardinals, you could just see how things are being managed with the staff and the players and how wore down he was. You just knew he was getting fired at the end of the season, and that's exactly what played out. So it's going to be interesting to see how he manages his time being full-time as offensive coordinator, and if he's going to switch up some things offensively, because at certain points of seasons, like, they would get rolling, but then it became very stagnant. There's not much motion in his offense. It's not much realignment of players within his offense. Like, take a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. He was staying on one side for the entire season. He never really got moved around. Like, so it'll be interesting to see if that time of getting fired, you know, then being at UNC, if he's now able to utilize his offense a bit better, the personnel, move things around, and kind of switch up the flow and the tempo of what is supposed to be like an air raid offense on the NFL side. But that's the main person I'm kind of, you know, on the fence about. But I guess it also seems like a lot of these moves too have been predicated to lure in, or if they can get this done, to make one person in particular feel very comfortable and at ease.
Yeah, a new quarterback, but also
not just any new quarterback.
Not a new quarterback.
The one. Williams. He's talking about the one.
We're gonna talk about Caleb, bro. Y'all gonna be mad at me, but
I know what you feel, Jamal. I already know what you want.
Hey man, all I'm saying, well, we're gonna talk about it. Hey, so for me, and I guess we can I'm gonna be short with mine, because I think we can talk about the conversation about the quarterback's coach, like a brief conversation. I mean, previous quarterback experience, excuse me. But one person that really stands out to me, I don't think it's like the more significant hire, or like the most outstanding or whatever, but John Pagano stands out to me. I think he was, what's his title here? Senior defensive assistant, right? But all of his previous stops essentially center around linebackers. When he worked for Vic Fangio, he was an outside linebackers coach. When he was with Bill O'Brien, he was a senior defensive assistant, but also in control of the outside linebackers. When he's with Marty Schottenheimer, assistant linebacker coach. He was also a linebackers coach. He was outside linebackers coach. When he was with Norv Turner, defensive coordinator, he's also a linebackers coach. Del Rio, assistant head coach, and then defense, right? Assistant head coach for the defense. So like all of his experience, and even with there's some other spots too in his past as well. But point being, and the reason why linebackers are so important to having that experience in a Pagano, right? That Pagano name defensively, even Chuck and John, like those are like valid names when you think about a defensive side of the football. And we look at our linebacking position in Washington, knowing what we just went through with Ron. it was so bad. Like we know that, and the fact that we're in year 4 of Jamin Davis, and we're still waiting for him to like solidify himself as a star. Like we see those moments here and there, but the fact that we only have really 2 linebackers that you can really like claim that has something there, but they haven't really gotten it fully out of them yet, and that's Jamin Davis and Khalid Hudson. Like those guys have been around, and Khalid, I think his contract is up unless he's in his 4th year right now. It's going to be interesting to see how they view the linebackers in free agency as well as the draft, because they're going to have to upgrade that position. But also the fact that Pagano's around and his voice and his influence and understanding the linebacker positions and his pedigree over the last 20 plus years in the game and on the pro level, I think is a really significant thing for the second level of the defense.
Also, Ken Norton Jr., former linebacker. He was the linebackers coach for the Seahawks back in the day. D coordinator, him and Pagano have worked together in the past. Something else I think I've seen, they all, yeah, I even mentioned it here, like Pagano, Ken Norton Jr., and Jack Del Rio all work together with the Raiders. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like linebacker will be an emphasis for sure. I just don't know how they're going to go about it exactly. I don't really like the draft class of linebackers too much. There's someone in particular that I admire, but his injury history is going to be a detriment where he gets drafted, but he could be still. Peyton Wilson, linebacker out of North Carolina State, is a dog. Like sideline to sideline, could play whatever you need at backer. So I love if they could pick him up. But yeah, this team desperately needs linebackers. Like even Jamin Davis, you got someone who possibly could be suspended for the first 2 to 4 games.
So, and can I chime in on that real quick? I was going to add to that. No, you're right about the whole linebacker thing. This is one of the things I've actually been kind of, looking into, looking back in Pagano and Ken Norton's background. I mean, these guys have coached studs, man. I mean, Pagano was there for Sean Merriman's prime. Like Sean Merriman had a hell of a prime, and that was Pagano as his, direct coach. And then you got Ken Norton Jr. He has guys like Bobby Wagner. He oversaw the development of Bobby Wagner, Bruce Irvin, those type of linebackers. So you got to, imagine that these guys are going to come in, their value in the linebacker position. And like you said, I love the fact that they all worked together before. So that shows some kind of cohesion. But as far as addressing the linebacker position, the most important thing is this is where Adam Peters comes in. See, now we all thought that when Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio got here, oh man, we're going to have some beast linebackers. These guys played linebacker. They understand the importance of the position. But the problem was, as we see now, they didn't have a guy that knew how to kind of identify those type of talents in the draft or go out there and get those guys. They didn't really have an idea of what they wanted to do personnel-wise, and that really hurts. And that's where you kind of hope that a guy like Adam Peters, the reputation he has, that he's grinded his teeth as a scout, he kind of identifies those guys that they are looking for. Like you heard it in the press conference, Adam Peters with Dan Quinn. He said, we're going to work in collaboration. I want to get the guys that fit him or fit this system, fit what we're trying to do, and we're going to do that together. So that's where Adam Peters comes in. You hope he can kind of find those guys. You want to get those nasty linebackers between the second and third rounds. I really think that's where you could find a lot of those guys at. Like some of the best linebackers you get in the league right now, they weren't drafted in the first round. You found some of those guys in the second or third round. So that's where you want to see Adam Peters, earn his kind of stripes in a sense.
Yeah, even you look back at Dan Quinn's tenureship with Atlanta, they ended up getting Foye Oluwakan, who's the middle linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 6th round. And he was with Atlanta. They drafted him 6th round. So, yeah, I think there'll definitely be emphasis on the linebacker position. So that's a good one for sure, Ma.
So let's talk about
is nobody going to talk about Bobby Johnson? I wanted to hear. I thought one of y'all was going to bring him up.
I'm glad you said that because I was about to go to the quarterbacks coach conversation.
Yeah, before we get there, I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
So look, here's my deal. With Bobby and honestly a lot of people on this staff, right? Like I respect all the names and I think AJ did a good job even calling out Cliff and like having questions for him. I honestly do have the same skepticism about Cliff. But you know, we'll just cross that bridge when we get there. But when it comes to offensive line, bro, like I think that is one of the more important position coaches that you can have on your team. And Bobby Johnson's track record. Here's one of the things that I'll just be playing with it. It's so sketchy that they gotta know something that we don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
That is so sketchy that they gotta know something that we don't know, bro.
What makes it sketchy though? Like
I think that his track record, but also like I know one thing, Buffalo. So all we know for the most part, he came from Buffalo, and then he had a stint in New York, right? With the Giants, and all I know is New York had a ton of injuries for several years with Daniel Jones, right? It's not just 1 year, several years with Daniel Jones, and that really hurt these guys. Let alone they never really had top tier offensive linemen to begin with. He ain't in charge of signing no offensive lineman. He's just there to coach them, right? And then you think about Buffalo. Buffalo for several years relied on Josh Allen to do magic for their offense. They had some pieces, right? But they just picked up some interior help this year, or this past off season. So like again, offensive line coaches, they ain't necessarily making the decisions to hire and draft somebody. I don't know how much influence they have, but they're not making no decisions. They just there to coach. So I don't know exactly. That's why I'm like, it's skepticism because of the track record and where he came from, right? I don't think it's a stain, but I think that when you look at like his track record, it raises questions of concern. But I also don't think that when you look at it from a totality standpoint, you can only do but so much with what you have, especially at a position coach. Now, granted, if you think about Washington, I think there was a time I would even say, oh Lord, I think I want to say it was under Ron Rivera, like in 2020, where there was a bunch of injuries. If not, it was like a couple years before. I don't know. I think it was even Bill Callahan or something like that. They had a whole bunch of injuries on that offensive line. I want to say 2018, matter of fact. And they were still holding their own. But you're talking about Bill Callahan being there. Like,
right.
That's kind of the makings of like, if there's a Hall of Fame for a position coach, like, you know, that's the guy.
But see, I guess that's my issue. I ain't really touched on the Bobby Johnson thing. It's because like you seeing fans go berserk on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. It's like you don't even know this man, or you don't even know anyone connected to this man to know how he teaches the game of football in the position. It's different when you can come in and you can reference something besides just where that person worked. Like if you actually know individuals that have been coached under that person. But it's like I don't know the dude. You feel me?
That's my main thing. Like if you don't know him, like the only thing you can do is go off of what you've seen, right? Or what you know. But the only thing you really get to, and this is why I say this all the time and on this show, the only reason why you even get to understand somebody or even understand a unit is if you watch tape. Like it's all you know. And if you get an understanding of their blocking scheme, then sure you have something to say. But even still, that's not going to help you know everything that they believe or what they're preaching or what they're teaching versus what the players are actually trying to execute on the field. Like I look at, for example, I had to watch there's a free agent on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line that's coming out, right? I think he's solid. Like he can compete. He's a fringe starter. He can compete for a starting job. Like, but you know, you don't want to sign him to big money. But you get to look for 6-7 games at their blocking scheme. And that's what made me appreciate Baker Mayfield even more. The shit that he did with that offensive line, bro, like their blocking scheme in the past game, like their run game was weird. Like their block scheme was cool, but they didn't get any push off the line. But like the way they pass protected, bro, the way that Baker Mayfield was able to navigate that pocket made him all the more impressive this season alone. Never mind his stats, like how he was able to survive back there, getting sacked 40 times and still produce. Like that's incredible work. But to that point, position coaches, I don't know what they're going to do with that guy in Tampa Bay, but from what I looked at in 5-6 games, like that's not impressive. But what does that mean for a person in Buffalo or New York the last couple of years, right? Who had to deal with bottom of the, like, no disrespect to the players, but like they were injured. Like there were so many people that wasn't around. How do you get an opinion out of that about who he is as a coach and what he wants to do if you don't know that man, bro? Like, yeah, I agree. It is sketchy. It's sketchy from that standpoint. Like, I don't know exactly except for what his units produced, but at the same time, I haven't watched anything in detail to say like he's bad or he's good. So, I don't know.
So they have a reference point. They could go ask Nick Gates, you know, who came from under that umbrella with him. But like I said, I don't know the dude. Like I tried to I communicated with, like, there's a big like offensive line guy that coaches a lot of the guys coming out of the draft.
Oh, Duke Manyweather?
Yeah, Duke. I reached out to Duke. Didn't hear back from him. Try to see if we could get him on the show to maybe speak on Bobby Johnson. But outside of Bill Callahan, how many people really know offensive line coaches in the league, bro? Like, do you know the offensive line coach for the 49ers or the Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the Houston Texans? Like, outside of Bill Callahan, and we really only know him because he was a head coach at Nebraska back in the day, and he's also been an NFL head coach. Outside of that, you would never know who any of these offensive line coaches are. You just hope for the best, and you know, you see how it plays out. But I mean, I don't know much about the guy to provide commentary on him. I just think that it's unfair or kind of crazy to see people going off like, oh my God, the New York Giants, he coached the New York Giants, that means he can't be good. Like, that's not how this works. Just because you even came from, even if you came from a winning culture, doesn't automatically guarantee you success as a coach. I mean, even while we're doing this show live in this comments, there's a conversation being had about Eric Bieniemy in the comments for the last 30 minutes, and we never have mentioned his name in this episode. You feel me? So it's like none of that guarantees you success. By the way, the Chiefs ran Eric Bieniemy's play corn dog to win the Super Bowl, in case anyone was wondering. But yeah, I mean, you just really don't know. Like, you just really don't know. So I just would say, like, just stand pat on that. The kind of things that you can reference to, and you have a lot of footage to go based off of, even if you're just a average fan. You can go and look at Cliff Kingsbury offense with the Arizona Cardinals. You can go and see the same thing that Joe Witt is going to be running in Dan Quinn's defense. Like, you can reference those points. Outside of that, everything else is really a toss-up for the average fan.
Hey, look, let me just add to this to close this part off. Fans have such a vague perception of what they think a position coach is. They think they can tell you how good a position coach is by just looking up, oh, did they give up this amount of yards or this amount of sacks or whatever? Oh, yeah, that guy's bad. It's the coach. You know, it's no contest, because if we had just hired Bobby Johnson fresh off of his Buffalo tenure, none of this conversation will be had. We'll be like, okay, this guy was up there with Josh Allen. You know, he didn't get sacked much. You probably wouldn't even know how much to attribute to, you know, Bobby Johnson or Josh Allen at that time, you know, because Josh Allen was, I mean, he still is a tough-ass quarterback to bring down. So quarterback position matters. Like, quarterback matters. We've seen that this year in Washington as far as sacks being taken. Like, if you look up the advanced metrics, Washington's offensive line probably grades out around average or maybe slightly below average in terms of ranking amongst the league. But if you watch the games with the raw eye, you're going to say, oh, that offensive line's horrible because they gave up so many sacks. But you don't realize that the quarterback plays a position in those sacks. The Giants, not only did they have a lot of offensive line injuries, they had a lot of quarterback injuries. They went through 3 or 4 quarterbacks this year alone. So, I mean, that plays a factor in how sacks are accumulated and everything. But when people just go look at the raw numbers, they're going to say, hey, that was on the position coach. That guy must be trash. Those guys aren't blocking. So there's no context or nuance with it, because as I said, after his Buffalo tenure, you probably had not even Giants fans probably had not much of an opinion on Bobby Johnson. They probably even felt good about him, like, oh man, Dable's bringing him with him from Buffalo. Man, we're good. But now you see, oh man, after everything that happened to the Giants, you're looking for scapegoats, you're looking for people to blame. So obviously, especially in Dable's position, he has to make a move. You know, I mean, you look at it and you say, all right, man, we've been sacked 85 times or whatever amount of times we've been sacked this year. I gotta probably make it a move, you know, because I'm probably not too far off the hot seat myself. So I gotta make it a move or a scapegoat to appease the fans or whatever the case may be. You gotta throw somebody a bone. But I mean, it's just the fans' perception of it. The fans' perception of everything is so vague. They think they can just look at raw numbers. I mean, again, I don't know what to make of Bobby Johnson. I went and looked at him. I mean, I checked him out as far as like just to hear him talk and speak. Now, this guy, I said the guy from David Rye, I said that he wasn't that sharp of a communicator or that, you know, fluent with his speaking. But Bobby Johnson is a hell of a speaker. Now, I don't know how that, you know, translates to teaching or anything, but he knows what he's doing. He's teaching his techniques, and he seems like he's always looking for something new. And he hasn't just coached the offensive line. I mean, he Buffalo and New York. The guy played offensive line in college football. I mean, he's coached offensive line at the college level. He's actually developed NFL prospects at the college level. So you got to figure the guy kind of can coach a bit, you know what I mean? But as fans, they're only going to look at, you know, what did you do last? And if you were a part of this horrible unit, you must be horrible too. And I just think that's such a, you know, flawed way of looking at things as far as a position coach goes.
OG,
Hey,
Bobby
TG,
Johnson. OG,
TG,
Bobby Johnson. OG, Bobby Johnson. OG, Bobby Johnson.
Hey, TGW, bro. I don't know, like my patience level was incredible because Drake, I was getting attacked. I felt like the whole DC was getting attacked by TGW in the chat for no reason, man. Hey, listen, he said he said Washington fans aren't bright, to be fair. They like go-go music and mumble sauce. You can't take anything they say seriously. I don't think we asked for that, brother.
Come on, bro. Hey, you
we ain't asked for that.
Culture now. Hey, we talking about football. You disrespecting our culture.
We ain't asked for that, bro. And AJ not including this because he don't like go-go. So anything he got to say, he gonna be muted. Matter of fact, try it. Say something. It's like, but nah, man. Watch yourself, man. Watch yourself, bro. DC here, bro. PG brother. County, DC, we all that stuff, bro.
We proud of where we from, man. We love our city. You know what I'm saying?
I almost went crazy while Dre was talking. I had to keep myself under control, bro.
I ain't even see it, bro. I would have got distracted.
Yeah, I saw it. All right, hey, let's go. So look, where we at? Let's get a quick like yes or no ish with this one, and then we get to the quarterback thing. You mentioned Dre, Kingsbury, Brian Johnson, Tavita Pritchard, David Rye. Is there too many cooks in the kitchen, or is this helpful for a young quarterback's development? Is it too many cooks, or is it helpful? Let's get like a one sentence takeaway with this one. Let's start with. I mean, shoot, Dre, you asked the question. What say you?
Oh man, one sentence. That's a lot of pressure. I guess I'm gonna go with there's pros and cons. That's my sentence. I mean, there's pros and cons to this. I mean,
you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. I'll just say. I mean. You know, there's pros in a sense, especially with AJ mentioned, you know, as far as following Cliff Kingsbury's offense, there's concerns about the offense, you know, what he can do at this level, at the NFL level. Now, you know, you got a lot of guys who have NFL experience. Maybe they can help him, you know, as far as, you know, kind of advancing some of these methods that he has with the air raid office to kind of bring him up to speed in the NFL. You know, maybe they could have him look at different angles. But then the cons aspect of it is, how many of these guys really know what you want to run? And, you know, is it going to kind of affect this in a negative way in a sense? Because you may be the only guy that knows what you really want to run and no one else is on the same page with you. So that's, you know, a brief little generalization of some of the cons that can go into that.
I'll say it's a pro. I think it's important to note, like when you think about positions, right? You know, sometimes like these backgrounds with quarterbacks indirectly helps other positions. And where are these guys at? You got Tavita, who's already the quarterback's coach. Brian Johnson, we don't know exactly what his role is yet. It's not defined, but Kingsbury and then David Rye, who's tight ends, right? He's tight ends, David is. Like when you think about these position coaches, like think about it from a mind of a quarterback and how they can translate that or communicate that to a skill position. You know, it may not all be centered in the new quarterback, right? But it can be centered in understanding. And then even if you define Brian Johnson's role, right? Like he's going to be communicating to all the skill positions. So how do you allow this person to influence you in terms of now I get to think like this quarterback, like our quarterback in our system, and then like I can make this particular decision because I understand more in detail what we want out of this offense, what we want out of the specific play, what we want out of the specific coverage, and where I'm supposed to be on a specific route, depth, everything, details, like down to the point in which the receiver or the tight end is thinking, even a running back is thinking exactly what the quarterback may be thinking, and now we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said one sentence. I would say just wait and see. I mean, that's all you really can do. Like a lot of these guys haven't worked together before, and they all have different experiences and different offensive schemes, different players that they work with, personalities where they mesh together well as a coaching staff on that side. But also collaboration is key to everything. You feel me? Like you also got to have that working rapport with one another. Like, I mean, look at us. Like we came together to do this show on Tuesdays, Trap or Dive. We never met each other before. We had, you know, couple friends mutually that knew each other, but we've been able to garner not just a relationship from the football aspect, but just life in general. And look where we are. Like someone put us together, but we kind of put ourselves together just based off of mutual connections. And we're pretty much doing a pretty damn successful job at pulling off these episodes. And you would think that we've been knowing each other for a decade plus. Like, so it's all about that cohesion and just how you could gel together. And that's why I just say wait and see approach. Because that's really all you can do with these things. You don't typically always want to have a group of people that all know each other because pretty much they're yes men. They're never really going to sway from that overall person's position. You want people that will challenge you, and this is one of the great opportunities to be in a space of people that will challenge your direction and what you're trying to do. And maybe that's something that Cliff didn't have as a head coach in his tenureship with the Cardinals. Like the only person really over there in his staffs that was like overall like been around the block was Vance Joseph. But outside of that, you know, he ain't really have like guys that he could really probably bounce those ideas off of, because you really haven't seen anyone go on from his staff to get, you know, higher opportunities or whatever in the NFL ranks or even the collegiate ranks. So this could be great for all parties involved. They can learn from one another, and just wait and see, as Washington will be drafting the quarterback in the first round.
Schleezo, what's up with you, player? Long time no speak, bro.
What's up, baby?
Good though, man. All right, let's get into it, bro. We say the best for last, man. We save the best for last. Everybody in the chat, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. I know Facebook probably like a ghost town over there, but we still going to stream anyway because we can. Where am I at? Bears want per Ian Rappaport. Bears want a historical haul for their number one pick. For anyone to trade up there. And for Washington fans, obviously Washington sits at number 2. In order to 100% secure Caleb Williams, you obviously have to move up. You have to be part of the game. Everybody in the chat, everybody that's watching, if you want to be a part of the conversation, let us know your thoughts. Would you be willing to move? Excuse me. What would you be willing to part moving? How much? This question just fucked me up.
What are you reading, bro?
That's what I'm looking at.
I'm looking at AJ wrote up in there.
I'm about to say this all just fucked me up. All right.
Hey, go aloud, bro.
All right.
What would you? Would you? Could you? Do you?
Yeah. AJ, you posed a question, bro. It fucked me up, bro. What was the question?
Essentially is what would you be willing to part with to move up to Bears #1 spot, or would you be perfectly fine with staying pat at #2 overall in the draft?
Boom, there you go. All right. So
that's for me to answer that.
Yeah. AJ, you got the floor first since you look at not use your words. Look, I'm the fall guy here. That's what's up.
He was like, Floyd Mayweather, I challenge you to read ALS from a Harry Potter book.
Hey man, that's crazy.
But yeah,
AJ, you got the floor first, bro.
For me, man, if I feel like Caleb Williams is my guy, man, I'm willing to move whatever to go get that guy. We just watched the Super Bowl where Kansas City Chiefs, they made a move to go, I want to say from 27 to 10 to go get their guy and Patrick Mahomes. There's no crumbs about that. When you're also trading these picks, you're already looking at drafts ahead. Like you already know what's going on for the 2025 class and 2026. So your scouting department is not just focusing on 1 year of draft class. Like you have an idea of these assets you would like to keep for the following season. So you already got a scope of the talent that's coming into next year. I would be perfectly fine with doing whatever I need to do to go get Caleb Williams. I think that the way the staff has been built out shows you that they're trying to invest highly in the education of a quarterback, whether that be on the field and off the field. Yeah, I feel like the top tier dog is Caleb Williams, and there's a gap between him and Jaden Daniels. Now, if you plan on staying pat and #2 is Drake May, y'all might as well just pack me up. Like, I feel like that's a miss already if you take Drake May at #2. So for me, I'm just hoping that they do the right thing and go and get the guy that they really want ultimately, whoever that is. If it is Drake May, I will disagree with that move over Jaden Daniels if Caleb Williams is the #1 pick. But I think that the best quarterback in this draft is Caleb Williams. And if I were Washington, I'd do whatever to connect the dots, not only from a on the field aspect, but even from a marketing standpoint off the field, bringing all the connections. Even I seen something before we started the show. Ben Standing posted a tweet. Bobby Ingram's son is pretty much best friends with Caleb Williams. They played together at Gonzaga. It's like all these connections is just like it's a bit OD at this rate. But we'll find out in 2 weeks. The combine is in 2 weeks. That's when these ownership groups and teams will finally be able to sit down with these top players. Unlike the Senior Bowl, these top quarterbacks weren't at the Senior Bowl. They'll be able to get a glimpse into their personality and those things. And that's when we'll probably hear of a trade happen, as March 2nd is the day that the quarterbacks work out. I don't expect Caleb Williams to work out. I really don't expect May or Jaden Daniels to work out. Ran into Jaden Daniels over the weekend at Super Bowl. That boy skinny as hell. Skinny as hell. But, we'll see what happens. But I think that if you truly want to go get your quarterback, and that's not just even for Washington, that's for any team that's in the hunt, because it's not just Washington that wants a quarterback. If you're the Raiders, you want a quarterback. If you're the Falcons, you're the Vikings, whoever, if you have the assets and the means to do so, to go get the quarterback that you truly want for your team, go and make that move. It is worth the gamble. Even if you don't hit on it, at least you could say that you tried and you went out your way instead of settling.
Right before you go, right quick, Jerry, just a quarterback news update from that 2022 draft class. The
Sam Howell class?
UFL's, yes, the UFL's Birmingham Stallions have signed former Panthers quarterback Matt Corral. That man not even in the league no more. Yeah.
Remember we was having conversations about Matt Corral. We was texting about him during his bowl game. You know, he was still at Ole Miss. We was talking about him.
I said I really liked him, and then I started watching the tape, and I told you, I said, yeah, nah, he ain't it.
Right.
I was like, yeah, this ain't it, bro. My bad. My bad.
I didn't like him either.
Yeah, it took me to watch a couple games, and I said, never mind.
But it's like sometimes teams feel forced to take quarterbacks because they need one so bad. And some guys get, talked about in certain ways. But yeah, I mean, it's a great year to go get it's a great year to have to go get a quarterback because you got options and variations of so many different guys, whether it be, the Michael Penix, the JJ McCarthy's, the Bo Nix, even Joe Milton. I feel like Joe Milton can ball. Like, he got the best arm in the whole draft, honestly. It's just the other intangibles, you feel me? But somebody might luck up on a guy in Joe Milton who can do everything and has an amazing arm. Just got some issues with, being inaccurate at times. But yeah, it's a great draft. Next year, the quarterback class is not too impressive. But yeah, I would definitely do whatever I need to do to go get my quarterback or whatever player it is I believe in. Last year we seen the Panthers do so in Bryce Young, but we also seen the Texans go get CJ Stroud at 2, but also we're like, oh, we need a Will Anderson, and moved up to go get Will Anderson at 3. They took 2 and 3 in the draft. Like, you got to be aggressive to get what you want in life in general, but especially in this draft. Like, if you see something you like there, man, go call your shots.
Yeah, Texas. I'm about to say the Texans also had the luxury of accumulating all those draft picks after the Deshaun Watson trade to kind of, move up and get Will Anderson at 3 after they took Stroud at 2. But I mean, honestly, I think the Bears are trying to create some kind of leverage here. I think they realize they don't really have that much leverage, because when you're sitting at that number 1 pick, you don't want to go too far back down. Like, no one with the number 1 pick wants to go too far down. Now, if you have a team sitting right behind you at number 2 that really loves a guy and they're right there, I think it's not going to take a historical haul. It should be something fair. Now, if the Bears really love Caleb Williams, if they love Caleb Williams, it would take a historical haul, which means they're going to draft him. They're not going to trade back. They're going to take the guy that they love. But if they don't love the guy, then they're going to have to take fair compensation for him, especially if they don't want to move back too far. So if I'm Washington, I mean, obviously you got to have that conversation with the whole group. I definitely feel like Cliff Kingsbury will probably have that bias towards Caleb. He just worked with him. He's seen him every day. I would defer to Cliff, honestly, because Cliff was the guy that was in-house with him. And Cliff also, I think, could be wrong here, but I think he had an interview with the Bears. So the Bears obviously talked to him too, because maybe they want to gauge him for information on Caleb Williams as well. Bears ultimately didn't hire Cliff, but we did. So that kind of makes me feel like maybe they do love Caleb. And if you do love him, you'll go up there and get him. But there has to be a limit, because the question is, you have to have this conversation amongst the group as well with everyone. How big of a gap is it between Caleb and Jaden Daniels? Or, Drake may, hypothetically speaking, and that's a guy that they like. Is the gap that significant that I want to give up capital to go up and get the guy? Now, if they don't feel like that gap is that significant, you stay there and you just let Chicago do whatever they will do. And you say, hey, I'm taking the other guy that I love. So, I mean, that's just the conversation they'll have to have amongst themselves. I mean, me personally, I like Caleb and I have him as my number 1 quarterback in this draft, but there is a limit to what I would give up to go up there and get him. Personally, I know you asked this question, AJ. I actually give you what I would give up. I would go number 2, obviously. The number 2 pick, you go up with that. I would offer both of the 3rd round picks this year and 2nd next year. That's it. I'm not giving up a multiple first. I'm not giving up one of my 2 seconds this year. I'll give up 2 thirds and a 2nd and the 1st round this year. I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, if they don't love Caleb, they'll take that. That's hell of a conversation.
You fucked up, Dre.
I mean,
I think. Hold on 1 second. I gotta make sure I get this off, because I forgot it when he was talking, and then I just remembered it because he said it again. Dre, you fucked up, bro. You said,
what's that?
You said, it's only fair. This ain't what you said verbatim, but you essentially said it's fair. It's only fair that, to move one spot back, Chicago. Matter of fact, I don't even want to misquote you as I give my argument because I know what you said, but you said it's essentially only fair that Washington moves up one spot and Chicago trades down one spot back. And it wouldn't take a historical haul, right? Like that's all. Okay.
Right. No, that's what I said.
The basis of that is to assume that we're going to make this trade in good faith, knowing that there are 1,000 other teams out there who wants to move up to that number one spot.
Correct.
Whatever Washington does to move up to number one is not going to benefit Washington at anything. It's going to benefit Chicago. They have the power to move out of that number one spot. So no matter how much we give them, it's not going to be looked at as, you know what? I think we both work things out on both sides. I think no matter what, there's going to be a slight advantage, whether it's large or slight, don't matter. But there's going to be some advantage in the favor of Chicago because of how much and how many offers they'll get from other teams. And I think that's what we talked about in the group chat, AJ and Dre. I think the battle for Washington is not anymore. It's not about I'm going to move up to Chicago and we'll just work this thing out 1 and 2, right? It's like how much does Chicago value the picks of the number? I'm gonna just name slots because I don't know. I don't have the draft order in my head. So how much do they value the number 6 team that's going to offer them some picks and some players? The number 8 team that's going to offer them some picks and some players, right? And the number 10 or the number 12, like how much do they have to offer me? Because that's who Washington's competing with. They're not competing. They're not trying to make this trade with Chicago and say, okay, cool, like this is a done deal. Like it's simple as that. Chicago's going to have to say, if I trade with Washington, I know that they're going to take Caleb at number 1, right? So if I trade back with Washington, that means all the leverage that I had for Caleb Williams, now I can trade back again if I want to, but these teams really wanted Caleb, and now Caleb's off the board. So I can collect some more assets. I can collect some more picks. I can collect some more players if I move out of number 2. But how much would I have gotten if I stayed at number 1 and gave that team who wanted to move up to number 1? How much would I have gotten? So for me, when you say fair, I'm like, you already fucked up because Washington's going to lose. And that's something.
I mean, no trade is going to ever be fair. But the Bears are in the perfect position to be able to acquire Washington's pick, players, and future assets, and still be able to sit at 2 and move back to acquire another first-round pick. So they could leave the draft with 3 first-round picks of the 2024 draft. It's really all based on Washington providing the best offer to them. But because as Dre said, they don't want to. They don't want to fall that far back.
That's my point.
Where maybe it's on a neighbor.
But that's what I'm adding to. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's my point too. Washington can't fuck around. Like they're competing with the other teams. Like it's just not that simple. Like Chicago has a decision to make, but Washington can't come around with no bullshit just because they're number 2.
Maul, that number 2 pick is so much more valuable than the number 5 or number 6 pick. Like that number 2 pick, we could probably, if someone wanted to come up to number 2 with us, we could probably take about 2 first-round picks off of someone alone. But that's how premium that number 2 pick is. And when I say fair, I mean kind of fair to Washington in the sense that they're not going to be giving up something historical. Historical would not be good at all. I say fair in the sense that
too.
Yeah, I don't see that, but I say fair in the sense that Washington's going up and they're not crippling themselves as far as assets that they're giving up. You know, you're giving up 2/3, you're keeping your second, but you're getting the player that you love the most in this draft. And that's fair if you're not giving up crippling assets.
I think there's one thing that we have to take into account too. While I agree that I don't think it's going to be historical, I think we people, not us three, but we people are severely underestimating the actual offer that it'd take to move up to number 1. I do think that it's going to be like, damn, because it's Caleb Williams, bro. Like the prospect that everybody has touted as this unified number one quarterback out here. Like majority has said was their number one quarterback out here. Like and the comparison that people continue to make to Patrick Mahomes, like who the hell gonna miss out? Who gonna want to miss out on that if you need a quarterback this year? So that's kind of where I'm at. And to answer the question directly, bro, like I'm not giving up a historical haul for him. I can't do that. And I don't have an example in my head in terms of like how much I would give for it to move up to number one. I don't have that picture in my head. But for me, man, I would tell you this, bro. Where I think Caleb Williams already lost as a prospect is not even his fault. It's just the nature of this game, bro. Who, like, I even had this conversation with people on Twitter today. Who in their right mind started comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, bro? Like, that's where everything went left. Like, we've seen Patrick Mahomes play for 5-6 years now, bro. He is one of one. There is nobody ever in this game gonna play to the level of Patrick Mahomes, right? And I say that from a winning standpoint. I say that from a mentality standpoint. Like that makeup and that build, bro, like those aren't clones. Like Tom Brady is one of one. Peyton Manning, one of one. Same thing with Pat Mahomes in today's era, right? He was the one who went back and forth, neck and neck, with Tom Brady. He was the only one who came close. And yes, he lost, but he came close. And I think like those are the only two. That's the only person that could really compete with him in today's age. And I say that to say, when you put all that pressure on Caleb Williams, right? And you sit here and say that this guy, now everybody hasn't done this, but you make those comparisons to Pat Mahomes, bro. Just because he has so many different throw angles, like arm angles and off-platform throws that are incredible. And the way he can, the arm slots, like the way he can release a football and still be on the money, like that's all impressive, bro. But that only is part of the game. That doesn't show you every single thing that makes up a quarterback and that makes up a winner, right? Like, sure, he's a talented quarterback. And for me, and what I'm saying is, I'm not against trading up. If you trade up to get Caleb Williams, again, it ain't even my decision, right? This is just all of our opinions. So if they trade up, cool. Like what's done is done. But for me personally, bro, like I'm going to make my offer, but I'm not about to bet the farm on things where like we're saying we see a clone or we see somebody whose semblance is one of the best quarterbacks out here in the game. There's always one-on-one, one of one. And the league reminds us time and again of what these like one of ones look like, bro. And I'm not about to fall for the trap. And that's not saying Caleb is a bad quarterback. He can probably be a top 10, but I'm not going to fall for the trap, bro. I would rather go ahead and keep building my team up. I'll take Jaden at 2 before I fucking bet the farm and bet my right wrist and my left foot.
Maul, to ask you, but AJ, let me ask Maul real quick.
I'm really surprised by your response, Maul, because you're a gambler. So it's like,
but see, AJ, I want to know if he's going to take. Is there any scenario in which you would trade up for Caleb Williams, Maul?
No, that's what I said. I would definitely be interested in trading up, but there's a cap. I was just saying I can't give a scenario, like I can't give a real live example currently right now. Like, what's my limit? Maybe I give up a first and a second. If they want a player, in replacement of a second round pick, I'll consider that too. But I'm not giving up 3-4 draft picks for Caleb, bro. I'm not doing that. I'm not giving up 3-4 draft picks and a player for Caleb. I'm not doing that, bro. Like I'm capped off. And that's kind of where I am, bro. And like I said, I said before we even got into this conversation, I said people may be mad at me, and I'm cool with that. Like, but I over the past few days, bro, and even after that Super Bowl, bro, and Pat Mahomes Super Bowl run, like who you gonna sit here and tell me, bro, like the process, the shit that he got going on in his head, bro, like the forward thinking, staying composed at all times, bro, like you can't expect that in other players until you see it play out. So why would I bank on something based on somebody who's been in the league for 6 years, bro? Like I can't do that. And I'm saying, I said this and I mean this. I said this a couple weeks ago. I said I would for sure. I would rather see a top end prospect come into Washington and fail rather than pass on them and see them succeed and be a superstar elsewhere. I that can apply to Jaden Daniels too, bro. Like I'm in this, it's the same boat. I would rather take Jaden, and if Caleb fits in that boat from a trade standpoint, trading up to moving up number one, cool. But I'm the person like that doesn't apply to just one person. It applies to a couple people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the draft in general. Like, it's all a crapshoot. You feel me? Like, even the year that Mahomes came out, most of us felt like the number one quarterback out of that entire class was Deshaun Watson, because what we seen him do at Clemson or whatever. Not one time was anyone arguing that Patrick Mahomes should be like the consensus number one or even number two guy. The beauty of what Patrick Mahomes has done is there was nobody that you could necessarily compare him to at that time to where he's at now. Fast forward 5-6 years with Caleb Williams, you now can bring that into comparison because they look similar in throwing angles, whatever, even from a competitive nature, like the things that Caleb Williams did high school level, like pushing Gonzaga to a championship in the area. You feel me? Like Gonzaga's never been a good high school football school. Like they've never been top dogs. That man willed that team to a state championship off of Hail Mary. Like, so it's just when you add in the fact that Washington also possesses a number 2 pick to bring a hometown kid possibly back home or whatever, and the traits separate him far further ahead than a Jaden Daniels and a Drake May. It's like you have to look into it and possibly pull the trigger on getting that. It's unfortunate that we live in a time where guys are going to get compared no matter what sport it is. We're seeing Victor Wembanyama get compared to people. You're now seeing Anthony Edwards, who was the number 1 pick, get compared to Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. Like, it's just going to happen. That's what comes with it. It's just that you hope that you build the right synergy and put them in the right situation to succeed. And also, if you are a guy like Caleb Williams, making sure that you get in the right situation to succeed, because Patrick Mahomes isn't Patrick Mahomes if he goes to another team outside of Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs. If Patrick Mahomes ultimately gets drafted number 2 by the Chicago Bears, we probably talking about him like Matt Corral right now. Like, not saying that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the talent, but the situation has never been stabilized over there to push a quarterback of that nature to the next level. The Bears have never had a franchise quarterback. You feel me? Like, never. They've never had a franchise quarterback. So even take a Jamarcus Russell, like, all these situations matter. That's why people have been speculating that Caleb doesn't necessarily want to be in Chicago, whatever the case is. Like, he'd rather play elsewhere. Situations matter, but Andy Reid and that marriage between him and Patrick Mahomes has pushed him to an elite level to where he's now already considered under the age of 30 to be the greatest quarterback of all time. And coming out of Texas Tech, many would say the air raid system doesn't translate to the NFL. Like, there were so many knocks, and now everyone is trying to go get the next Patrick Mahomes. Funny how it works, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like it's an unfair thing. It's an unfair thing for Caleb Williams to have to deal with. But some people are built for that, and I feel like he's built for it. It's just more so. Let's see if Washington feels the same way when they sit down with him. They have those conversations, and they feel like, hey, we got our guy. But I'd rather go for whatever it is I want than to sit back and try to settle on, in this particular situation at quarterback of Jaden Daniels or a Drake May and be concerned about, oh, I need to build up the rest of my team. Like, I ideally feel like Chicago's going to move off the number 1 pick. And if Washington is to get the deal done, it will be the swap of the 2nd round pick. It will be a future 1st round pick, 2025. And it will probably include their 2nd round pick, which I believe it should be like 34.
Something like that. I do want to be clear though, to your point.
And
though,
I think Jonathan Allen be a part of the trade.
I want to be to your point though. I think 2 things. One, I don't think so. My decision isn't based on like focusing on like building up the rest of the team. Personally, I know you wasn't like just talking to me, but personally, like my idea isn't like about building up the rest of the team and reserving draft picks. But I think like cost in the league, like sometimes when you overpay, bruh, like those things don't really amount to nothing. And I think that's kind of the most important thing. And it's not about just like factoring in recent history. It's just like understanding the game. Like you have to understand, like when you go all in on something, sure, it may take a lot. Like I think even to one point, non-quarterback side, like the Falcons gave up a lot to get my God, Julio Jones. They gave up plenty. I think they had to trade up to get him. And I think there's some other trade up for skill positions where they gave up some, but it wasn't like a huge ransom. But they did what it took to get a skill position, and it worked out in their favor, right? But to that point, like it's just capped off, like, and that's kind of where I'm at. And it's not about reserving pitches. Like this is what I got. If you don't like it, cool. I'll keep it pushing and staying pat in that and understanding that you have a structure in place for any of your top 3 guys, top 3 quarterbacks to succeed in Washington. I think that's the most important thing, like the structure and why we mention those quarterback positions, those former quarterback experiences. That's why this is important, is because you can get any of these 3, even though you may have a preference, but all 3 can work because you have an environment that's going to be able to let these guys succeed. And then the second thing, let me close out if anybody got any last thoughts on the conversation. Second thing is fit in environment matters. And I think I'm really glad that AJ brought that up. Pat Mahomes being with Andy Reid was probably the best thing that happened to him. And he sat for a year. He sat for like 16 games, played that 17th game on the road against Denver. And that was his one experience in his rookie season before he took over in 2018 for in place of Alex Smith. And I think environment matters, coach instruction matters, and being able to learn in real time, but also learn in practice and also learn so many different nuances of the game, right? Like I think all of that matters. And for Washington, I'm not saying that they don't have a solid structure because we don't know it all. But I think that's one of the best things when you realize like you're playing along with one of the greatest coaches of all time, and you got that tutelage from him. And I think that's important too. We got any last thoughts on the QB?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel pretty confident. And,
your mic is muffled. I don't know.
Can you hear me?
You good now?
Yeah, I said I feel pretty confident that Chicago is going to move off the pick. Will it be Washington? Don't know. But a lot of those conversations will start taking place in 2 weeks. I'm excited about, what happens during this combine period. I think you'll learn a lot about player movements, whether it be in free agency and also draft-wise, because I think that Washington also needs to figure out if they are going to move up to number – because, like, them moving from number 2 to number 1 to get Caleb Williams also changes how they will be able to lure in free agents as well, because there's guys in the free agent market that are going to be hoping for the chance to play with a led team by Caleb Williams at quarterback.
All right. That'll do it, man. We had one more thing we was going to talk about. We can spin the block next week because I think this was a really good episode. We had a good conversation about everything we need to know about these coaches and quarterback. But we ain't done with quarterback, man. We're going to be having some of these same conversations over these past few weeks, man, or these next few weeks, especially when we start having some guests on. So stay tuned for those. We're going to try and get somebody on from the Draft Network. He was a previous guest before, Keith Sanchez. Try to spin the block with him. Probably try and get first time ever get a head coach on this thing. So we're gonna try and get that taken care of soon, and probably get a couple former players on as well that coached under Dan Quinn. So we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Don't want to do too much because I hate jumping the gun. But I'll just leave it there. We'll get the work done on the back end. But fingers crossed we get all that done. Wish us luck. Dre, AJ, man, y'all take care. We'll tap in during the week. Everybody else out there, y'all be safe. Appreciate everybody who tapped in live. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button if you haven't done so. But we up out of here, man. Enjoy your day, enjoy your weekend, all that good stuff. Peace.